This happened in August when my friend Cass and I decided to take a weekend trip to our cabin up north. It's a small, rustic cabin with running water, electricity, and a bathroom, so we call it luxury camping. The place is tiny, about 600 square feet, with one bedroom, a fold-out couch in the living room, a small bathroom, and a mini kitchen. Even though it's remote, there are plenty of fun activities nearby, like shooting, dirt biking, and off-roading. We had a little schedule planned for the weekend. On Friday, we unpacked, went out to eat, then did some grocery shopping and relaxed. Saturday was mostly spent on activities like I mentioned until the sky suddenly filled with thick clouds, hinting at a big storm. We decided to bring everything from outside into the shed, then put on a movie and started cooking dinner. At some point while we were eating, we heard heavy rain pounding on the cabin roof, quickly followed by loud, booming thunder, sounding like it was right above us. We decided to go out to the porch to watch the storm while finishing our meal. We had a great view of the sky from under the awning. The lightning was constant, lighting up the dark sky, and thunder rumbled almost immediately after each flash. We were right in the heart of the storm. Then we heard a loud noise from the forest, like someone calling out, though it wasn't clear. Since we were in a remote area, hearing any sounds nearby was unusual, but it felt even more unsettling in the middle of such a storm. We figured it might be a lost hiker or something like that. I stepped closer to the edge of the porch, getting a bit wet as rain splashed under the awning. Between the lightning and thunder, there were brief moments of light where I could see the tree lean. That's when I saw a person standing there, clear as day. I told Cass, but she immediately got scared, thinking I was joking and asked me to stop. I thought about calling out to ask if they needed help, but I held back because I felt a bit uneasy. This trip was my idea, and I didn't want to freak Cass out. I told her, I think it's just a lost hiker. She asked if we should help, and I said, only if they come to the door. I suggested we go back inside and gently nudged her to go in. My curiosity got the better of me, though, and I returned to the edge of the porch, standing in the rain as I looked around. Then I saw them again, closer this time, maybe just 20 feet away from the porch. I squinted as a quick lightning flash lit up the area, confirming my suspicions. There was a man standing there, wearing bright-colored clothes, just standing still, not moving towards the porch or anything. I hurried back inside and shut the door. Cass could see the worry on my face and could probably hear my heart pounding. I tried to keep her calm, saying we might get a knock from someone needing shelter from the storm. The next 5 minutes were the longest ever, just listening to the rain and thunder, feeling and hearing footsteps on the porch outside. There's no doorbell, so we were expecting a knock, but instead, there was an odd noise, like someone fiddling with the only wooden door we had. At that moment, my fear hit its peak. Cass was hiding in the bedroom, quietly calling for me to come to her. The noises at the door stopped, but there was no knock. I went to the bedroom and told Cass to stay calm as I checked things out. I went back to the living room, turned off the light, took a breath, and pulled back the curtain. When I looked through the window, I saw the figure in white running away from the window, disappearing quickly. I wasn't sure what was happening but hoped they'd left for good. I moved to the kitchen window, which didn't have curtains or a light on, realizing halfway there that there was a face on the other side, visible even through the rain-blurred window. I shouted as loudly as I could, "Hey, go away," trying to sound intimidating, but the person didn't move. I wanted to call the police, but there was no Wi-Fi in the cabin, and cell signal was weak. During a storm like this, there was no signal at all. There was my dad's rifle under the bed in the bedroom. I left the kitchen and rushed to the bedroom where Cass sat on the bed, biting her nails from stress. I grabbed the rifle from under the bed, took it out of its case, luckily finding a loaded magazine nearby. I inserted it, and while doing this in front of Cass, I wasn't hiding the seriousness of the situation from her anymore. But then a loud noise came from the bedroom window, like someone had thrown or slammed something against it, followed by another loud noise from a window in the living room or kitchen. There was more than one person out there. It was too much at this point. I told Cass to stay in the bedroom as I headed to the front door, positioning myself to be ready to shoot if anyone tried to break in. I quietly opened the door, and when I felt ready, I pulled it open fast, raising the rifle toward the door. There was no one there. Running on pure adrenaline, I went outside, did a quick turn on the porch to make sure no one was there, then headed down the steps and looked out. There was the figure in bright clothing again, standing where he'd been before near the window, seemingly trying to look intimidating. He looked at me, and I'm pretty sure he didn't know I had a rifle. I fired a shot in the air and heard him yell in a deep voice, "No," as he ran off into the darkness. I could hear at least two other voices fading into the distance, likely communicating with each other. Then there was just the sound of the storm again. I don't know how many people there were, maybe 2 or 3. They could have been teenagers pulling a prank, or maybe some creepy people trying to scare us or break in. I don't play around with things like that. If someone had approached the porch while I was out there, I wouldn't have hesitated to fire. The next day was Sunday, so we packed up and left. There were no signs that anything had been tampered with on the car or cabin from the night before. I made sure everything was locked and took anything valuable with us this time. In all the years my family has owned that place, this was the only encounter of its kind I'd ever had. The experience left me feeling uneasy about staying there, especially alone. I've been back a few times with my family since, but I'll never go there alone again. I was 13 years old when I experienced my first night alone at home. It was an exciting experience because my parents had recently started trusting me to stay alone through the night. The only rule was not to leave the house or let anyone in, which I was totally fine with. There was something thrilling about being able to play music as loud as I wanted or play video games without Dad yelling at me. To make things even better, it was a rainy night that turned into a thunderstorm. I sat outside under the awning for a bit, watching the storm, as I often did. I had always loved thunderstorms. After a while, I moved my Xbox from my room to the big TV in the downstairs living room. My dad's TV was massive, with a flat screen and a Bose sound system. The only time I got to play there was when I was alone, and I loved it. The downstairs living room was half a level down from the main living room, and it was level with the backyard, so the backyard door opened into it. I'm describing it in past tense because I've moved away, but my parents still live there. I was playing Call of Duty, Black Ops in the downstairs living room, with the volume up, chatting with my friend Cody over an old headset. That headset was so basic, you could only hear the other players or sounds from the game. For a 13-year-old, it was a perfect night. But then my moment got interrupted by the doorbell. It was past 9 o'clock, and I told Cody that someone was at the door. He told me to go check who it was. I wondered if my parents had come home early, but they had keys, so they wouldn't be ringing the bell. I paused the game so I wouldn't get killed and went up to the front door, asking, "Who is it?" without thinking. I didn't realize what a big mistake that was. A man's voice from the other side said, "I need to use the phone." I didn't know what to do, so I just stayed quiet and went back downstairs. But it was too late. The person knew someone was home. I told Cody what happened, and his reaction was simply, "Oh man, what the heck?" He agreed that I shouldn't open the door. The doorbell rang again, and Cody told me to ignore it. That was the last time I heard the doorbell. After a while, I started to relax again, thinking the guy had left. I can't explain the ups and downs I felt that night. One moment I'd feel on edge, then I'd relax, and get back into my game. But just as I was fully engrossed, I heard something to my right. When I looked over, I saw the backyard door slowly closing, and a tall man walked inside. He wasn't my dad, he was a stranger. I dropped the controller and ran for the office door, tearing my headset's wire out of the controller as I bolted. I got to the office and slammed the door shut. I'm not exaggerating when I say that the second I locked it, the handle shook violently as the man on the other side tried to open it. The office had 2 doors, one leading to the downstairs living room, and the other to the garage. My only chance to escape was through the garage, but I waited, frozen, listening for any movement outside the door. Seconds felt like minutes as I stood there. Then, the man knocked on the door and said, "Hey, kid, I just need to use the phone." His knocking turned into pounding, and his voice got angrier, shouting, "Open up. Open the door, you little brat." He sounded like he was trying to break the door down. I had no choice but to leave through the garage. I pressed the button to open the garage door. It was loud and slow, and I prayed he couldn't hear it. As soon as it was halfway up, I crawled under it and ran through the storm to my neighbor Julian's house. I knew Julian well because I used to play with his dog, Cooper. I heard Cooper barking when I rang the bell and looked back at my house, hoping to see someone coming down the street. Julian opened the door, and I ran into his arms, asking for help. His wife came out of the kitchen, looking puzzled. When I told them about the break-in, their faces changed immediately. Julian called the police and took responsibility for informing them of my parents' address. The wait felt endless before the police arrived. When they did, they had me come out with Steve, one of the officers, to tell them what happened. I explained that I escaped through the garage. Some officers went into the garage and searched the house. About 5 minutes later, they came out with a man in handcuffs. They made sure he hadn't seen my face as they loaded him into the police car. They asked if I knew him, and I replied, "Of course not. I don't know this man." The man kept telling the officers that this was his house and that I was his son. It was clear he was either drunk, on drugs, or just plain crazy from the way he acted and the things he yelled. He was taken to jail, and my parents were contacted about how they wanted to proceed. They decided to press charges against him. His name was John McCarr, and he was charged with trespassing. This didn't make me feel any safer, knowing he would be released someday, and he knew where I lived. Luckily, it was just a random coincidence. I don't think he targeted me or our home specifically. So when he was released, he never came back.